The lights were bright, the cameras rolling, and millions were watching. On that stage, Donald Trump leaned into the microphone, ready to land yet another attack. His voice cut sharp through the air as he mocked Barack Obama's record, dismissing years of work with a single wave of the hand. The audience stirred, some uneasy, others waiting to see what would happen next. And then, calmly, almost quietly at first, Barack Obama spoke. His words carried a weight that stopped the room in its tracks. "Well, that's not exactly true, Donald." What followed was a revelation so unexpected, so direct, that even Trump, so often quick with a comeback, was left reeling. This wasn't just another heated exchange. This was a moment of truth, broadcast live, where perception collided head-on with reality. The stakes weren't about a single debate stage or a political rivalry. They were about integrity, about whether years of effort could be erased by a soundbite, and about what happens when someone underestimated finally decides to set the record straight. By the time Obama finished, the atmosphere had shifted completely, and Trump was visibly losing control. The setting could not have been more intense. A live, nationally televised event watched by millions across the country. The stage was carefully lit, draped in bold, patriotic colors of red, white, and blue. Cameras from every major network zoomed in, capturing every blink, every smirk, every word. The stakes weren't just political theater. They were deeply personal, with reputations and legacies hanging in the balance. On one side of the stage stood Donald Trump, leaning confidently on the podium, his tone already combative. He had arrived determined to dominate the conversation, to control the narrative, and to belittle his opponents. His body language screamed aggression, sharp gestures, dismissive shrugs, and a rhythm designed to put others on defense. Across from him was Barack Obama, composed and deliberate. Though no longer in office, his presence carried an undeniable authority. For many in the audience, Obama represented not only leadership, but also the credibility of lived experience. Someone who had actually navigated the pressures of the presidency and emerged with real achievements. The moderators shuffled their notes, trying to keep the conversation on track, but it was clear the underlying tension was building. Trump wanted to discredit Obama's record and portray him as weak, ineffective, even fraudulent. Obama, however, wasn't just a guest on stage. He was a guardian of truth, ready to step in when the distortion became too great. The atmosphere was electric, anticipation humming through the crowd. Every cough, every laugh, every pause seemed amplified by the microphones. The press gallery scribbled furiously, sensing that this would not be an ordinary exchange. Something bigger was about to happen, and the audience could feel it coming. This wasn't just a debate. It was the collision of two forces, live for the world to see. Donald Trump wasted no time. The moment the moderator opened the floor, he leaned into the microphone with that familiar smirk and began his assault. His words were sharp, rehearsed, and calculated to provoke. "Barack Obama," he declared, "talked the big game. But at the end of the day, what did he really do for the American people? Nothing. Nothing but speeches." The room shifted, some murmurs from the audience, others leaning forward, waiting for a reaction. Trump thrived on that tension, on planting doubt, and he pushed harder. "You know what the problem is?" Trump said, now leaning over the podium. "He was never transparent. Never. Nobody really knows what he accomplished. It was all staged for TV, like a show." The moderator attempted to interject, but Trump brushed it off with a wave of his hand. The attack wasn't about a single policy. It was about erasing an entire legacy in front of a live audience. The escalation reached its peak when Trump turned directly toward Obama, pointing and sneering. "You failed. Admit it. You failed the American people, and you're still pretending otherwise." The words hung heavy in the air. The crowd reacted. Gasps, nervous laughter, scattered applause from Trump's supporters. The tension was no longer just political, it was personal. Everyone knew what Trump was trying to do: corner Obama, provoke him, make him stumble under the weight of accusations. But what no one expected was what would come next. The moment when Obama decided it was time to step in and set the record straight. The setup was complete, the conflict was drawn, and the stage was primed for the turning point that would flip the entire exchange upside down. The air was thick with tension. Trump's voice still echoed as he jabbed his finger toward Obama, demanding he admit failure. The audience braced for a rebuttal, but instead, they saw something else. Barack Obama, leaning slightly forward, calm, collected, a faint smile tugging at his lips. And then, with perfect timing, he spoke. "Well, Donald, that's not exactly true." The words were measured, not loud, not angry, just steady. Yet they carried a weight that silenced the room instantly. The moderator froze, the audience leaned in, and even Trump's momentum faltered. Obama continued, his tone even but unshakable. "You can repeat slogans, you can throw around insults, but facts don't bend to noise. And the facts, Donald, are clear." A ripple went through the crowd. Some clapped, others gasped. The moment wasn't just about what Obama was saying. It was about who was saying it. This wasn't a rival politician trying to score points. This was a former president of the United States, a man whose reputation for composure and intellect was recognized worldwide. His voice carried an authority Trump's bluster couldn't drown out. Trump shifted at the podium, the smirk slipping into a half-strained half-smile. For the first time that evening, he looked unsettled. Obama's presence was more than symbolic. He wasn't just defending himself, he was defending the truth against distortion, facts against spectacle. His intervention signaled to everyone watching that this wasn't going to be another one-sided barrage. The moderators sensed the gravity and allowed Obama to continue. The audience's reaction grew louder, applause breaking out, cutting into Trump's dominance of the stage. For viewers at home, the contrast was undeniable. On one side, a man relying on soundbites and sweeping accusations. On the other, a leader who had lived the experience and was prepared to ground the conversation in reality. This was the turning point. The clash was no longer about Trump's ability to attack. It was about Obama's ability to expose, with calm authority, the fragility of Trump's performance. And with that single moment, the balance of power on stage began to shift. Obama didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. His calm delivery was enough to command the room. "Let's deal with the facts," he began, his eyes fixed on Trump. "When I took office, this country was in the middle of the worst financial crisis since the Great Depression. We created millions of jobs. We stabilized the auto industry. We cut the deficit by more than half." As he spoke, the screen could flash supporting images, graphs of job growth, headlines about economic recovery, photographs of Obama meeting factory workers. Each fact landed like a stone against the hollow shell of Trump's attacks. "We didn't just talk about health care, we made it possible for over 20 million Americans to get coverage. Parents could keep their kids on their plan until age 26. Insurance companies could no longer deny people with pre-existing conditions. Those are real families helped, Donald. That's not a show." The audience erupted in applause. Even viewers at home could sense the weight of those words, the difference between rhetoric and results. Trump tried to cut in, muttering, "People hated it. Obamacare was a disaster." But the momentum had already shifted. Obama pressed forward, refusing to be dragged into pettiness. And internationally, we restored America's standing. We rebuilt alliances that had been broken. We led the mission that brought justice to Osama bin Laden. That wasn't staged. That was real work, carried out by real people risking their lives. Gasps and cheers ripple through the crowd. Obama wasn't just defending himself, he was dismantling the narrative Trump had tried to build. Each accomplishment he cited was not abstract, but tangible, tied to human lives and undeniable outcomes. The contrast was striking. Trump waving away legacies with vague accusations, Obama countering with facts, stories, and achievements etched in history. You may not like the results, but you can't erase them. The American people lived them. In that moment, the stage no longer belonged to Trump. It belonged to Obama, to the truth, and to every family who had seen the impact of those policies in their own lives. As the applause swelled, Trump leaned forward, his voice cutting through. "That's not what people are saying, Barack. Everyone knows your so-called accomplishments were a disaster. Just ask anybody." But Obama didn't flinch. He let the noise settle, then spoke with the kind of measured calm that made every word land heavier than any insult. "Donald, leadership isn't about what people are saying. It's about results. It's about families who could afford health care for the first time. It's about young people who found work when jobs were vanishing. It's about our troops who came home after years of war. Those aren't talking points. Those are lives changed." His tone was firm, but never angry. It was the voice of someone who knew his record and didn't need to embellish it. The audience reacted, applause breaking out again, louder this time, echoing across the hall. The shift was undeniable. The energy in the room no longer leaned toward Trump's provocations, but toward Obama's composure. Trump, visibly rattled, crossed his arms, shaking his head, muttering under his breath. Meanwhile, Obama stood tall, not defensive, but resolute. Every line carried quiet strength. It wasn't just a rebuttal, it was a reminder that facts endure longer than insults, and dignity outlasts noise. And in that moment, the crowd knew. The dynamic on stage had changed completely. The moment the exchange ended, the impact was immediate. The audience inside the hall erupted, cheers, applause, even a few standing ovations. Moderators struggled to regain control, but it was clear the energy had shifted. Barack Obama had not only defended his record, he had dismantled the narrative Trump had tried to build. But the ripple effect extended far beyond the room. Within minutes, clips of the exchange went viral on social media. Hashtags like Obama clapback and Trump meltdown trended worldwide. Short video edits circulated on TikTok and Twitter, racking up millions of views in hours. Commentators praised Obama's composure, calling it a masterclass in staying calm under pressure. For many viewers at home, the moment struck deeper. People who had directly benefited from Obama-era policies began posting personal stories. A mother explaining how the Affordable Care Act paid for her child's life-saving surgery. A veteran who shared that Obama's foreign policy decisions had brought him home safely. A student who credited Pell Grant expansions with allowing her to attend college. The abstract accomplishments Obama listed on stage suddenly came alive through real human experiences. Of course, the backlash was just as loud. Trump's loyal base rushed online, calling the exchange rigged and accusing moderators of bias. Trump himself took to Twitter late into the night, firing off a flurry of posts attacking Obama, the media, and even members of the audience. Yet the very intensity of his reaction only reinforced the perception that he had lost control. Meanwhile, Obama did not fan the flames. He offered no late-night tirades, no defensive press conferences. Instead, he let the moment speak for itself. The silence was powerful. It underscored the difference between responding with dignity and spiraling into noise. The impact was undeniable. A viral clash that reminded the nation of the contrast between spectacle and substance. between insults and integrity. What happened on that stage wasn't just about politics. It wasn't only about Barack Obama defending his legacy or Donald Trump losing his composure. The deeper meaning of that moment lies in what it revealed about truth, perseverance, and the power of having someone stand up when the noise gets too loud. For countless Americans, Obama's words weren't just statistics or policy points. They were reminders of real experiences. A young woman wrote online that she'd been able to stay on her parents' health insurance while battling cancer at 24. A father shared how his job at an auto plant had been saved during the financial crisis, keeping food on the table for his family. A veteran posted that Obama's foreign policy decisions allowed him to come home alive to meet his newborn daughter. These weren't abstract talking points, they were lived realities. And in hearing them acknowledged on a live stage, people felt seen. The broader lesson is clear. When someone's contributions are erased or twisted, it's easy to believe the loudest voice in the room. But reality isn't built on volume, it's built on actions. Obama's calm defense reminded us that preparation, dedication, and results will always outlast slogans. There's also a reminder here about the importance of advocates. No one can rewrite their own legacy alone. It matters when someone with credibility is willing to step in, cut through the noise, and vouch for the truth. In workplaces, schools, communities, this principle applies everywhere. Having allies who know your work and are willing to defend it can change the outcome when you're under attack. The moment also underscored why being underestimated can sometimes be a strength. Trump assumed that by shouting louder, he could control the story. But underestimation gave Obama the advantage. When he finally spoke, the contrast was so sharp, so undeniable, that it resonated even louder than Trump's theatrics. And perhaps the most lasting significance lies in what this moment says about integrity. In a culture where soundbites dominate and viral clips often outweigh truth, Obama's intervention showed that dignity can still win the day. Facts, when delivered with confidence and clarity, still have power. Integrity may not always be flashy, but it leaves a longer shadow than insults ever will. For millions watching, that night was a reminder leadership isn't measured by who can talk the loudest. It's measured by who can stand tallest when it matters most. The lesson extends beyond politics. In our daily lives, in our workplaces, in our communities, we all face moments when noise threatens to overshadow substance. What counts is having the courage to stand for what's real, to defend not only ourselves, but also those whose voices might otherwise be drowned out. That's the deeper message of that night. Preparation meeting opportunity, truth cutting through distortion, and integrity triumphing over spectacle. What we witnessed that night was bigger than a debate. It was bigger than two men on a stage trading words. It was a moment that reminded us all that truth matters, preparation matters, and integrity can still rise above noise. Trump wanted to erase a legacy with soundbites and accusations, but Obama showed that results speak louder than insults. And the reaction, the applause in the room, the millions of people online sharing their stories, proved that people are hungry for honesty, for substance, for leaders who don't just talk, but deliver. So here's the challenge for you, watching this right now. When you see someone's work being diminished, when you hear lies spoken louder than truth, will you stay silent or will you speak up? It doesn't take a debate stage or millions of viewers to make an impact. Sometimes it's as simple as defending a colleague whose efforts are overlooked, correcting misinformation when you hear it, or standing by a friend when others try to tear them down. Because if there's one lesson from that moment, it's this: silence helps distortion win. But even one calm, steady voice, armed with facts, grounded in integrity, can shift the entire room. That's how change happens. That's how truth survives. If you believe in stories that highlight courage, that cut through the noise, and that remind us of the power of dignity and preparation, then this is just the beginning. Subscribe to this channel,
because we'll continue to bring you stories that matter, moments where substance triumphs over spectacle, where integrity proves stronger than arrogance. And remember, history doesn't remember who shouted the loudest. It remembers who stood for something real. So, as you step into your own daily battles, ask yourself, will you echo the noise, or will you be the voice of truth? The choice, as always, is yours.